Yes. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first ever Ask Dale. My name is George, but that's not important because you might recognise this chap to my right, far better looking than I am. Dale, founder of Electricity and pioneer of green energy here in the UK and beyond. You'll also see on this hangout we've got plenty of special guests from right across the green sector. But they'll introduce themselves shortly, and we've got lots of questions for Dale. But first things first, I just want to explain what we're doing here and why we're here, basically. So the next 30 minutes, we'll keep it short, there's a lot to talk about. We're going to keep it really short. You'll see and hear each of our amazing panelists asking Dale a question. So the best way I'd probably describe this is think of it as question time without all the fluff, and a much better looking Dale Dimbleby, younger, better looking, a lot more money. But the serious point is that we want to address the most pressing issues in the green energy sector, and there's no better person to answer those questions than Dale here. We're also very keen for you, you being the audience who are watching, to get involved as well. So if you want to have a chance of getting a question answered by Dale, simply use the hashtag AskDale, and we'll find it on Twitter. You can also ask it on the Google Plus event page. We can't guarantee that they get asked, but it will definitely get asked at some point in the next couple of days. So now let's move on to the introductions of each of our amazing panelists. So the first person we're going to start with is Tony from Friends of the Earth. So Tony, if you'd like to introduce yourself and ask your question to Dale, that would be great.
Thanks a lot. Hi, I'm Tony Bosworth. I'm an energy campaigner at Friends of the Earth, where I lead Friends of the Earth's work on unconventional gas and oil. My question for you, Dale, is that shale gas is being put forward as the big energy solution, and the industry and its supporters say that shale gas is needed to enable, in their words, renewables. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's the first time I've ever heard that. And I find it quite an incredible thing to say. I'm not really sure how oil and gas can enable renewables. To be digging out unconventional sources of it, you know, it's not like we don't have enough. It was National Grid that did a study said by 2030 the North Sea should be powering the whole country with gas if we follow our decarbonisation targets. And 2030 is about the time that most people really think that the shale industry might be coming up to 15. So it seems like something is coming along that we don't actually need, but the time it's running at full speed, we actually need it with the surplus for requirements and something that we really practical. So I don't understand why they would say it was a bit of renewables. Do you know?
Tony?
Yeah.
Hello. Sorry, I think you were saying, why did they say it? I think they're saying, why are they saying it? I think they're saying that we need gas alongside renewables. We need gas to help us get off coal, and therefore, you know, if we're moving from coal to gas and to renewables, we need that gas as part of the, sort of the transition. I mean, that is not something which we support. We think we can move straight from. We need to move wholeheartedly as fast as we can to from fossil fuels to renewables. But I think the industry's view is that we need to go via gas.
It's a bit of a red herring, though, isn't it? Because we've already got gas. We get, you know, a bunch of it from by the rest from other parts of the world. It doesn't justify fracking the countryside, does it?
Yeah, there's a bit of delay. But Tony, I hope that answered your questions. We're going to have to move on to the next one. We've got quite a few to get through. So next we have Ruth from the Vegan Society. Hi Ruth, if you wouldn't mind just quickly introducing yourself and asking your question to Dale.
Of course. Hi Dale, good to see you. I'm Ruth. I'm head of communications, public policy and research at the Vegan Society. As many of Ecotricity's followers know, you've been vegan for many years, Dale, and what would you say to others that are looking to reduce their carbon footprint, who already drive electric cars and who buy their energy from Ecotricity?
Hi Ruth, good to see you again. As you know, our big focus over here is on energy, transport and food. It's like a merit order of things that have impact, things that consume fossil fuels and are unsustainable. And energy, transport are the first two, which have kicked off the list in the hypothetical case. And so to somebody that wanted to do more than that, I would say stop eating meat and dairy, because it's the single biggest change you can make in your diet in terms of impact. on fossil fuel consumption and carbon emissions. It's going to be topic today, and very vegan, if you like.
That's great to hear. Thank you.
I think that question was designed for that answer, wasn't it?
Very well played. Very well played. So next we have Alice from the brilliant Trillium Fund. Hi Alice, how are you? If you wouldn't mind just quickly introducing yourself and asking Dale your question, please.
Great. Well, I'm covering the community manager's role at the Trillium Fund, and we are a peer-to project lending platforms. We basically crowdfund for renewable energy projects. And my question has been, basically, Good Energy have been looking at, basically introduced a local a tariff for people living near their wind turbines. So are you thinking of doing something similar?
Well, we've looked at it for a couple of years on and off, actually, and we've wondered if the pros outweigh the cons and that kind of stuff. I think Good Energy have done it for Delapole, and they had to get special derogation for them to do that, actually, because often this is what they call RMR, retail market reform, and those actually prevent a whole number of things that you might otherwise be able to do. It's given us trouble with our electric car tower. We'd like to have a heat pump tower as well. And so,
I can't quite
the problems come around. So the problems come around defining the area within which you operate that. As I understand, Good Energy is probably 100 or 200 people at the most around that wind farm.
Yeah.
There's a danger that it's a bit kind of divisive and exclusive, because there'll be people that live outside that line that can see the wind.
Oh, that's true. Outside the area, yeah.
And you can't take part. So that's kind of like the major downside.
Yeah.
So yeah, not at the moment.
Okay, yeah, that's really interesting. Thanks.
Thanks, Alice. Before we move on to Will from Triodos, we actually have a question from someone on Google Plus that's not part of the Hangout. He's called Neil Carmichael, and he's asking, what can Ecotricity do to provide a more and deeper information to their customers on a more regular basis? So he's given an example of perhaps something like a C-rate.
I should explain I laughed because our MP is called Neil Carmichael, and we don't particularly get on that well. And I'd be very surprised to find him.
It's a very kind question if it is him.
What can we do? We'd like to do more. I have a blog already, and I'm kind of like absent from it. I'm not sure we're starting another committee group, but I thought we have this annual report that we produce is like full of grabbing a lot of stuff. So every year we've done that for every customer. And so we do stories, we email our customers, people up there, that kind of stuff. We have a virtual thing called Transformer. We'd like to do more, but it's pretty good.
Great. So hopefully this MP will be pretty satisfied by that. So next, let's move on to Will from Triodos. Hi Will, how are you? If you would mind just introducing yourself quickly and using your question, Dale's way, please. Will, we can't hear you, I'm afraid.
George, is it worth asking people to mute while talking? A lot of background noise.
Until Will can figure out. Will, if you just start speaking when your microphone starts working again. In the meantime, we actually have another question from Twitter. It's from @AlexanderSin, and he has asked, how interested are other energy providers, in brackets the Big Six, in using green electricity, and if there's a resistance, why?
Well, I think in the last 6 to 12 months, all of the big six have got their green energy tariffs. So they all used to have one. I think they used to have one particularly good. They didn't really do much with it or have many customers on it, a few tens of thousands at the best. And they dropped it again because of this thing Ofgem have done called RMR, which have restricted the energy companies to only tariffs. And the logic of the big thing is that if we're going to have tariffs, it doesn't make sense to do it. Quite a few people. So the big six stuff is energy, I would say.
I think it's satisfied. Will, can you speak now and see if it's working?
Is that better? Can you hear me? No?
Just turn you down a little bit, quite loud. So if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and giving us your question, please.
Hi, I'm Will Ferguson, and I'm Head of Communications at Triodos Bank in the UK. We are a sustainable bank that only lends to organisations delivering positive benefits, including Ecotricity. Some of the ones we've been lending to more recently are community energy projects. Dale, I'm interested in hearing more about the role that you think community energy can play in the transition to a low-carbon economy, and how Ecotricity sort of dovetails in with that, how Ecotricity can fit in with that.
Well, I think it's kind of early days for community energy, as I see it. There's not, you know, an awful lot of it going on, and we've been from time to time involved in a few different schemes and talked to a few people and offered help and stuff. I don't see a necessarily massive role for Ecotricity, but we're always willing to help where we can. I think that community energy fits really well in the decentralised model of renewable energy, the idea that we make power near to where we use it. And also I think it's a fantastic hearts and minds thing, because if people are involved in their own energy projects with renewables, you know, then you know, they become passionate believers and advocates, and you overcome planning problems and all that kind of stuff. You know, in the same way that feed-in tariffs, although I really didn't think they were a good idea, the one thing they had going for them was that it did result in a lot of solar panels on roofs and small windows that other people got to see, and it was a good kind of hearts and minds thing. So I'm for community energy, and as a company we're for it and willing to help where we can, but we don't have a particular program. We don't see a particular role for ourselves in it, but maybe that will change over time. Maybe you have an idea.
I'll let you know.
Tactical. So next we have Harriet from the Do Nation. Harriet, if you would mind just introducing yourself and giving us your question, please.
Sure. Hi Dale, good to meet you. Hi everyone. My name's Harriet. I'm the Chief of Operations at the Do Nation. And the Do Nation is all about encouraging people to take small actions towards more sustainable lifestyles. And one of the actions we encourage is to switch your energy supplier to a green energy supplier. But we do find that that isn't the most popular action. And I'd be interested to know why you think that is. What is it that kind of discourages people from doing this, and how do you think we can overcome it?
Hi Harriet, thanks for that. I think generally switching your energy supply is just it's just a difficult thing. It's not just about green energy, but you know, something like half the people in this country haven't switched before, despite 20 years of competition. It's kind of like a big ask for some people, or for most people, obviously. You know, to go to all the trouble to change from one company to another, it's just part of what we live with, really. That there's a great inertia among people. Partly they might think it's hassle. Some people might worry, you know, whether the lights will go off or whether they need a new meter. You know, we don't get so much of that these days as we used to. I'd be really interested to hear what the most popular thing for people to do is. Actually, that might be quite interesting.
Sorry, I missed that. I missed that last bit. You'd be interested to hear
from you what the most popular thing to do is for most people.
Actually, probably be quite pleased to hear that it's vegging out, which is eating less meat. So that would probably go down quite well with you.
Yeah, that's great.
So we have a question from our last Hangout E, if you will, which is Grant Thomas, who says, I'm probably seeing your thunder here, he is a self-proclaimed electric car evangelist, you can't say that word, and sustainability guru. So I think I've just introduced you, so I think you can jump straight into your question.
Thank you, Dale. Some introduction. Actually, the day job I do work for IBM, but I have selected a Nissan Leaf as a company car a couple of years ago. I've driven 23,000 miles in it in just 2 years. I wouldn't go back to petrol and diesel driving now. So really a big thank you for taking the leadership view, Simon and the team, for creating Electric Highway, which has just enabled these, I guess, first generation electric cars to go that much further. So a couple of questions really. The first one is about the rapid charger network. You said you're going to introduce charging to use the rapid charger network from January next year. Will that be by kilowatts? Any idea of the kind of cost, and will it be free for existing Ecotricity customers?
Unfortunately, I can't can't answer most of those questions. We don't really know what we're going to charge or how. It's unlikely to be very eco-efficient customers, I think. It would be something we could do for a little while, but probably couldn't sustain in the long term. The electric highway is currently costing us nearly £300,000 a year to run, I can tell you that. And that's not, it's not even mostly the cost of energy, actually. It's the cost of the 24-hour customer service and the back office and all that kind of stuff. So we just reached the point where by the end of this year we know we have to charge something for it to start covering the cost. And also we want to make sure that we can keep pace with the growth of the EV market and keep putting in charges. So by the end of this year we'll have done 100% of the railway service stations, but we will also double them up. So there'll be 2 pumps at each station, getting ready for the time when there's a queue of EVs ready to charge up. And obviously we have to go on from 2 in the years to come. So it's just really, I suppose, putting the electric highway onto a more commercial footing. But at this point, we don't know what we'll charge or how.
Okay. Secondly, and sorry for a second question here, but your thoughts on the current state of the network, and obviously you've had some problems with the DBT rapid chargers you've been fixing. I think that's nearly done now, but how's that going? And also the triple heading, so i3 drivers driving BMWs will be able to use the network. When's that going to complete?
Well, we've done 6 triple-headed units already. By the end of this year, we think it will be 50 or 60. And we've been having conversations with BMW and also with the Volkswagen Audi group, because they also use CCS or Combi, as it sometimes is called. And so we're very keen for our electricity pumps, as we like to think of them, to be triple-headed, to cater for all the major standards. There's 3, as you probably know. There's 4 if you include Tesla, but we probably shouldn't talk about them. So yeah, there you have it. I mean, combi charging, CCS is coming to our network, and by the end of the year, it'll be on nearly half of our pumps.
Okay, thanks.
Great. We've got a few questions from social, so I'm just going to ask one question from Twitter, and then I'm going to, because we've got about 10-ish minutes left, I'll just open it to the proverbial Hangout floor. So if anyone else has any more questions, you can. But first of all, we've had a question from a chap called Tom Ferrand. That's at Tom Ferrand. He said, if you had 100,000 more customers today, could you supply them with renewable energy?
Probably could, actually, because since the Big Six exited the market, there is a lot of spare green energy in the wholesale market, so we could go out and buy some. Obviously, it takes a couple of years to build a windmill, but we're in the process of doing it. But sort of short answer, yes.
Yep. So let's open up again to the Hangout. I'll give you 5 minutes, so the first person to jump in wins.
Okay.
So
another question on the. I'll step away from the electric car.
Not Grant.
Oh.
You already had 2 questions, so if anybody else has a question, speak up now.
Yeah, I've got another question. It's Tony, if I may, please.
Yep.
Dale, what do you see as being the relative roles of big renewables and community scale renewables in, changing the way in which we power the UK? Do you see them both as having a role, and which do you think is the more important, if there is one which is more important than the other?
Well, I think they do both have a role. If I had to choose the most important, I would say big, because I think it will have the biggest impact quickest. I think the small scale stuff is important for 2 reasons. One is it gets people involved. And it's the most important thing, I think, to have people with us. But also, it's deeply embedded in the system. It's at the point at which it costs the most to deliver power, down at the domestic end or the small community end. So it's a good place to make power.
Did you hear that, Tony?
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Brilliant. Next up, if no one else speaks, Grant can have another question.
I didn't answer his second question completely, actually. I didn't answer the DBT part.
Grant, would you like to ask another question in that case?
Well, Dale can answer on the DBT. I was just going to ask, there's a lot of coverage today on the news about the price drop in the wholesale market over the past X number of months in the Big Six. Just wondered what, Dale, your position was that with Ecotricity.
Yeah, cool. Well, I'll start with DBT. There was a design fault with the fast chargers that DBT were making. I don't know how many people know that, but it did cause a series of faults, and at any one time, 20 or 30% of our electric highway pumps were out of action. There's been a quick fix put in place to temporarily solve the problem, and that's made a massive difference. And then in the next few months, there are going to be permanent changes made to the units. And really, it was just about making them acclimatized. They simply weren't coping with the damp of the English weather, believe that or not, but it's true. So we're over the worst of the problems with DVT and with issues of unreliability. In terms of the news today, there have been drops in the short term energy on the wholesale markets, and I think that in a way Ofgem has been a little bit naughty in the way they've presented this news, because they know that energy companies buy forwards, they hedge, and typically you'll hedge for at least 6 months and more normally 12 months ahead. Hedging protects energy companies and their customers from price volatility. Ofgem are just focusing on the biggest drops in the short-term market, which is player hedge, and there's a big difference between that and how a company normally hedges. So if there has been a drop in the market, there's no doubt about it, but had the market gone up by the same amount, it wouldn't be putting bills up, because most companies hedge and do the same as that.
Great. Does that answer your question, Grant?
It does, thank you, Dale.
Perfect. So, anybody else? So, any questions from Ruth, Will, Alice, or Harriet?
I've got a question.
Yep, it's Ruth.
Dale, you were saying about reducing meat and dairy, and I just think that followers of Ecotricity would like to hear how you would recommend doing it if they wanted to reduce their carbon footprint that way.
Well, I don't know how I would recommend doing it. For me, it was very easy. I just stopped eating meat as soon as I left home, because I'd always find it quite repellent. I think dairy is possibly a little bit more tricky, because if you're accustomed to the taste of milk, it's really quite fatty, quite rich. And when you first try soya milk, it tastes very thin and unappealing. In that case, my advice would be just stick with it for 2 weeks, because your taste buds will adjust, and then soya will be quite acceptable. And then when you try cow's milk, maybe 3 or 4 weeks later, you'll find it quite disgusting. In my opinion, I think most people do. Because it is very fatty. It's designed, after all, for baby cows, not for adult humans. And they need a lot of saturated fats to grow their bodies very quickly. So it's not at all a natural drink for humans.
Great. Alice, Harriet, or Will, do you have a question? Any further questions?
Yeah.
No? We'll take that as a no.
Hang on.
I think Alice is about to try and speak.
Sorry, I keep muting myself.
That's okay.
Yeah, I wanted to just ask you about the planning appeal that you've got at the end of the month for the wind farm, and about how confident you feel that's going to be able to go through this time, and just your general thoughts about the fact they keep getting turned down.
Can you tell me which one you're referring to? Because we've got a few on at any one time.
Oh, have you? Oh, right. Well, it was the one that was turned down by Eric Pickles. I can't remember the exact area.
I know the one. That's actually a judicial review of Eric Pickles' intervention.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Really hard to say how that one may go, because it's our first judicial review of the plan. I think there's something a lot of people in the industry are waiting to see, with some anticipation how it goes, because if we win, it would be a significant blow for Pickles and his interference. But we think there's a case. We think it's blatantly political interfering in the planning process. The planning inspector at the public inquiry had recommended our wind farm for approval, and Eric Pickles simply went the other way. It just doesn't seem to be any basis for it at all, but hopefully we'll find a solution in the courts.
On that note, I think we'll end it here. First of all, thank you to all of our first ever group of Ask Dale panelists. Fingers crossed this will be something we do more regularly in the future. We'll get a bit more specialist, so I know the Grant, you'd probably definitely like to be involved in a more in-depth discussion about electric vehicles, for example. So just stay tuned. When I end this podcast in a minute, it will be uploaded to YouTube, so you can rewatch this later on today to digest all of everyone's wisdom. And the only thing I have to say is thank you, Dale, and thank you to everyone watching and to panelists. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dale. Thanks, George. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.